Does stem cell therapy fix osteoarthritis? Having dealt with this in my left knee since my early 30s, it was something I was very curious to find out for myself. A big reason for that is because there aren't really any alternatives for individuals in my age group that actually repairs or fixes the knee. My biggest challenge throughout all of this was finding a doctor and a treatment center that I felt comfortable with and that I could trust. If you look online, you will find a number of doctors and facilities making outrageous claims and using what I feel to be underhanded marketing tactics. Their goal is to convince people they're qualified, but if I can see through that, how am I ever going to have faith that these people are worth trusting with my well-being? I just simply don't want to risk my well-being in someone or some facility or company who would do that. This is a major reason why I'm doing this video. I wanted to share my experience with you. You will hear me mention Revival Clinic Bangkok in this video on numerous occasions, and I did not receive any discounts. I did not receive any freebies. If you would like to see the receipts and the billing, I'm more than glad to send it to you. Just shoot me an email. So while this video will detail my journey with Revival Clinic Bangkok, getting stem cells to treat my osteoarthritis, I strongly encourage you to do your own homework and your own research and find a facility that you have the same high level of trust in. Maybe that's Revival Clinic, but maybe that's somewhere else. That is up for you and you alone to decide. At the end of the day, this video isn't about recommending a place to have the treatment done. It is about answering a straightforward question. Can stem cell therapy fix osteoarthritis? My osteoarthritis came on very quickly and was very severe. I had never really had any issues with it until one day I was playing basketball and I came home and I noticed my knee swelling up far larger than anything I had ever experienced in my life. The swelling was there for probably a week and a half, maybe longer. And when it did dissipate, I had noticed that my knee had lost strength. It had lost lateral movement. It felt like something had dramatically changed in my left knee. Running and jumping from that point on were far more difficult than had at any other point in my life. Of course, stupidly, I continued to try and play on it. The process after each time was basically the same. My knee would swell up for a week or two. I would have even reduced movement on it. It was just a really bad experience. It was really just lowering my quality of life during this whole ordeal. This continued for about 8 months. I never thought that there was something wrong with my knee. I thought it was just normal wear and tear. But after about 8 months, I got a little suspicious and decided to go get an MRI done. The results of that were really a bummer. The MRI showed I had just about no cartilage left in my knee. The doctor was pretty astounded that it actually had happened to someone this young. There was good news and bad news that doctor offered me. The good news is that there was no structural damage. I didn't need surgery or anything like that. The bad news is that there really wasn't any way to make it better apart from drinking glucosamine and not doing anything for a year or as long as it continued to happen. Apart from that, he mentioned knee replacement would be another avenue I could explore, but it really wouldn't be recommended for someone as young as I was at that time. That first year, I drank a lot of glucosamine and I didn't put a lot of stress on my knee, and I saw little to no results. Eventually, I grew really frustrated with this and started doing elliptical at the gym just so I could have some sort of physical activity. This, swimming, and riding a stationary bicycle were basically the only activities I could do that wouldn't trigger massive swelling in my knee. After about 2.5 years, I began experiencing really loud, just remarkable popping in my knee. There wasn't any pain. It wasn't like a hurtful thing, but anytime I would bend it or I would get up or I do anything, there would just be these loud pops and cracks accompanying it. From having that MRI done in 2016 to the time I eventually did receive the stem cell therapy treatment in December 20 2020, I had explored the topic of stem cell therapy to fix osteoarthritis. It was something I looked into. I'd spoken to a few people who had the procedure done, and they all spoke highly of it, but I still was a little skeptical about the whole procedure. I mean, could stem cell therapy really fix osteoarthritis? It seemed too good to be true. That's how I can best describe it. It felt like, while I had heard people say it worked, and while I had sort of seen some studies and stuff on it, it just felt like it was a solution that was too good to be true. I started to seriously kick the tires on stem cell therapy treatment towards the end of 2019, looking for a solution to my osteoarthritis. Then COVID hit in 2020, and I had a little more time. It freed me up to go visit some clinics, talk to some doctors, and really get a better understanding of the process. Being based in Bangkok, well, there's good and bad about it. The good, obviously, is that the city has a ton of facilities and clinics that can provide the treatment. On the bad side, however, is that you never really know what you're always going to get with some of these clinics. There are some definite good ones, and there are some other ones that I could not recommend less. This was something that was especially evident during my consultations with different doctors and different facilities during 2020. My first meeting with a clinic that provided stem cell therapy treatment for osteoarthritis, it went really well. I went to the most well-known clinic here in Bangkok, one that happens to treat athletes and other celebrities, politicians, what have you. The doctor was really understanding, really sort of took the time to answer my questions. Overall, it was a great experience. However, it was also extremely expensive. It was out of my budget, and while I felt comfortable with that doctor and that facility, it just wasn't financially feasible for me to have it done there. The next stop I made was one that, well, I believe to have a lower price. So I went into this clinic. I met with a doctor who just seemed like he was in an extraordinary rush. Like, the meeting took less than 15 minutes all told. I didn't really answer any questions. He just sort of said, this is what happens. This is what you're going to do. This is how much it's going to cost. But during the time he was quoting me, he threw on a bunch of add-ons that I needed as well. It wasn't just you're getting this treatment, you have to get all of these add-ons as well. So I ended up being quoted a much higher price than I was led to believe when I had called to schedule my consultation. Even worse was the fact that I got charged for this privilege to hear a doctor overquote me or overprice me on the procedure. There were quite a few clinics in Bangkok that do operate like this as well. This was one of the worst sort of medical experiences of my life in general. And this is the ones where you have to be careful for, when it's more of a business approach as opposed to a patient-centric approach. For those living overseas and unable to travel to Bangkok, a lot of these clinics are well equipped to handle both overseas patients and are more than happy to schedule consultations with you digitally, on Zoom or Google Meets or even Skype, phone call, what have you. What I would recommend is make sure you have an MRI or some sort of documentation on what you're suffering from and what you want to do, as this will sort of help give that meeting extra substance. But again, if you're overseas, you aren't obligated to come do the consultations in Bangkok. But I would recommend, before you go in to have a procedure done, you at least meet with the doctor one-on-one, just so you get an idea of who it is. You put a person to the name and face you saw on your computer. Why did I choose Revival Clinic Bangkok? Well, after doing some research online, there were two things that stood out to me the most. Firstly, the online reviews were very positive and also seemingly authentic. They weren't sort of those fake reviews you do see from time to time, on Google or Facebook or what have you. Everything seemed to be very real and very authentic, and that is something that I appreciate and value. Secondly, their website was more detailed than what you would find from other clinics who simply say, we do X, Y, Z, A, B, C, blah, blah, blah. Their website, again, detailed, had information, and frankly had pricing, which blew my mind. Having gone through so many clinics and having spent so much time looking at it, it is one of only a few that actually puts detailed pricing on their website. Detailed, accurate, and correct pricing. I want to clarify and stress that. The pricing on the Revival Clinic website, what I saw there is actually what I would eventually end up paying. And the consultation was totally free, so I really had nothing to lose here. When I spoke to Dr. Cho during my first consultation at Revival Clinic, I left very impressed by the thorough level of honesty she answered my questions with. There was no hard selling, there was no false promises, there was no hope, I guess you could say. It was very much Dr. Cho wanted to see what my issue was, if the treatment could help my issue, and if, most importantly, having it done would benefit me and would improve my quality of life. Dr. Cho also really helped me understand what I needed to do to make sure having the treatment done was a success. She made it perfectly clear that, just injecting the stem cells in my knee wasn't enough. There were going to be lifestyle changes I would also have to undergo in order to reap the maximum results. Ultimately, it was that honesty and that commitment to my well-being that made me choose Revival Clinic Bangkok over one of the city's other facilities offering the treatment. Before moving ahead with the actual treatment, Dr. Cho also wanted to have an orthopedic surgeon take a look at my MRI and provide a second opinion of my condition and what would be good for my treatment. While she had checked it out and heard the popping and sort of had a good understanding of everything, she just wanted to have that sort of second opinion and that second voice to make sure it was still worth my time and my money, I suppose. That kind of surprised me, but it was also, I found it to be really impressive. Dr. Cho went out of her way to make sure the stem cell therapy for my osteoarthritis was in fact the right treatment and it would be beneficial. That would be eventually confirmed by the second opinion, and from there I decided to go ahead with it and schedule my treatment. It was here Dr. Cho explained what would happen on the day of treatment, as well as other facts I should be aware of. I needed to avoid any impact on my knees that would cause swelling or inflammation, as these can both significantly reduce the effectiveness of treatment. Apart from that, there really weren't any major restrictions. There was no need to alter my daily life or anything. It was just, I had to be careful with my knee just to make sure that there wasn't any swelling or inflammation. Perhaps the most important thing to note in all of this is that you can't be sick, you can't be ill, you can't have other injuries if you are going to undergo stem cell therapy treatment to fix osteoarthritis. That's because it's possible stem cells travel to repair other parts of the body in those instances. And if you're suffering from diarrhea, well, it's pretty likely you're going to end up expelling your costly investment. Should you be sick or have an injury or need to postpone for any other reason, you must give the facility 24 hours advance notice. That's because the stem cells need to be transported and stored correctly. There's no sort of altering the schedule once that 24-hour period has been entered. The treatment itself, it's a straightforward series of injections, nothing more, nothing less. It takes less than an hour to do all told, and that's it. Yeah, it's just needle in your knee, that's it. For the first 7 days after the injection, you really have to limit your movement in general. No long walks, no climbing stairs, no strenuous activities. You aren't bedridden by any means, but you really need to limit the movement and the sort of weight you put on your knee during this time. I had chose to have the procedure done during the holidays just so I wouldn't be required to go to work, or I wouldn't be worried about putting any undue stress on my knee during these first 7 days. If I'm being honest, there wasn't really any pain in the aftermath of the treatment, although this is something others may experience. For me, the biggest downside was just my knee was pretty swollen in the mend and the recovery of the treatment. And this is something that's also extremely common in the days after the procedure. The popping in my knee was still really evident in, I would say, the first 6 weeks in the aftermath of it, which is what I was told was normal and to be expected. As you sort of progress after that first week of very limited activity, you can scale up what you do. You can start walking more, but you don't want to put too much stress on your knee, during that sort of 6 weeks in the aftermath of the treatment being done, just because you want the stem cells to be able to work their magic. Dr. Cho told me that after 30 days, it's okay to resume most normal activities. I played it really safe. I was very sort of paranoid that I was going to ruin it. I didn't want to test things too much on my knee. And again, and that's part of just the larger process, is that stem cells, while they'll begin to work in a few weeks, it's really a process that takes months and even years to see the full benefit from. One thing I will say about Revival Clinic Bangkok and Dr. Cho is that she was always checking up on me. If I ever had a question or a query or a concern, she was always there to answer that. And that sort of aftercare support in a time where you don't really necessarily know what to expect. I found that aftercare support to be very invaluable and something I don't think you'll find with other places offering the stem cell therapy treatment. As I mentioned, I really try to avoid doing anything on my knee whatsoever, just fear of derailing the whole recovery process or the effectiveness of the stem cells in correcting my osteoarthritis. That being said, I think the first time I noticed an improvement was maybe about 6 weeks after I had the treatment done. I needed to cross a street here in Bangkok and cars were coming, so I had to be quick. And I remember planting my leg down in the ground, just sort of jogging across, and I had felt a strength and even a level of mobility that I hadn't experienced in years. It was around this same time I began to notice going downstairs was becoming easier and easier by day. The burden of going downstairs was less and less. This was probably the biggest challenge I faced before getting the procedure done. There were a lot of times when I was on the Bangkok BTS, the SkyTrain here, and I was going down a flight of stairs and I was one stair at a time very slowly because that's all I could muster with having no cartilage in my knee. One thing that Dr. Cho was very careful to say to me and explain to me is that when people experience results can vary wildly. It's very much a thing that happens based on an individual. I never went into the post-recovery process expecting anything because I didn't want to get my hopes up too much. Even after experiencing that first bit of recovery, of feeling a level of strength in my knee I hadn't had in years, I still was a little nervous about it. I didn't want to do anything that would put that in risk. So I think it's safe to say I was too cautious as far as pushing myself and seeing what my knee was capable of in the aftermath of treatment. After, I'd say, a little more than 6 months of having the stem cell therapy done to correct my osteoarthritis, that's when I really saw the results, experienced them just in what I believe to be their entirety. I wouldn't claim that by this point in time it was fully healed or anything close to that. But if me in my 20s, that was 100% of, peak physical condition, after 6 months, I was probably at 70% of that level, which was up from, I would say, maybe 10% or 20%. I had nothing in my left knee, and to get it to 70% in 6 months, it blew my mind. That brings us to today, nearly 2.5 years since I had the stem cell therapy done to treat my osteoarthritis. What have the results been? Well, I saw a really big jump between having the treatment and that 6-month period. And while I would say from the 2 years between sort of the 6-month period and today, the improvement hasn't been as noticeable, but it has been a slow, steady improvement throughout that time period, throughout the 24 months, the 30 months, what have you. There's no more popping, which is great. I can get out of bed, or I can go from laying down or sitting on the ground to standing up without hearing these huge pops in my knee. living my daily life is much better. Just again, not having to worry about climbing stairs or going downstairs. I can do anything I could have done when I was in my late 20s. That being said, I still avoid high impact activities. Like I don't play basketball. I don't do most sports, just mostly because I don't want to reverse the effects of the treatment. If you start doing a bunch of high impact things, you are going to run the risk of the cartilage deteriorating once again, because those high impact activities are what caused it to deteriorate in the first place. So for me personally, the joy I get out of, playing sports or doing stuff like that, it wasn't really worth it to, again, having to need another stem cell therapy treatment done 5 or 10 years down the road. However, again, the reason why you'll see professional athletes do it repeatedly is because it can provide that sort of quick fix. Does stem cell therapy really fix osteoarthritis? I can say unequivocally yes, based on my own experience. That is, I went from having almost no mobility, no strength in my knee, to being able to do anything I want on it. Really, it doesn't mean I do anything I want, but it means I have the same freedom and same quality of life and movement I had when I was younger. The most notable change, again, it's the little things. It's the things that were just annoying. Trying to sit on the ground and being unable to because it was just that difficult, or just put that much pain on my knee. I appreciate having that freedom to not have to worry about, I can't sit on the ground, or I have to wake up. Like, is the pop in my knee going to wake up my wife because it's so loud? Just having that sort of freedom to be able to have full movement and full support in my left knee. It's been totally worth it, and it definitely works. But again, your experience is going to vary, and Dr. Cho was very frank and very blunt that the results can differ wildly between individual to individual. Despite what you will hear some doctors and some practitioners of stem cell therapy claim, this is not a magic bullet. It's not a cure-all. There are risks to it in that it may not provide the same level of benefits that I experienced. This is a medical procedure after all, and that means nothing is guaranteed. How much improvement you record really depends on a number of factors. The most notable, obviously, is the reaction of your body to the stem cells, but as Dr. Cho told me, there are a few things that you can do in your daily life to improve the success rate. For example, if you are overweight, you will need to lose a few pounds in order to reduce the burden on your knee. Personally, this is something I struggled with 2.5 years ago. I struggle with to this day, getting down to a weight lower than what I am currently. However, despite this, I'm fortunate enough, I suppose, to have seen results. Beyond that, you should also focus on strengthening your leg muscles, namely your quad, your hamstrings, as these can also help take away some of the pressure and the weight that your knee ends up bearing. Stem cell therapy treatment, it helps repair and restore joints, but you shouldn't look at it as a standalone solution. You need to be proactive in doing other things to support that decision and that procedure to make sure it can be a viable long-term solution, or else you will need to have the procedure done again a few years down the road. Of course, there will always be skeptics when it comes to this, but I'm telling you, my own firsthand experience, stem cell therapy treatment does fix osteoarthritis. The improvement I have witnessed has been remarkable. It's been enjoyable, and I am incredibly thankful I decided to have the procedure done. The biggest challenge in all of this actually wasn't medically related at all. It was finding a place that I trusted to do right by me. There are heaps and heaps of bad information, false promises, and really just unscrupulous facilities out there, which at the end of the day can complicate your search to find a facility that you can trust. Regardless of if you're going to have the procedure done here in Bangkok or in Thailand or in anywhere else in the world, do your homework, ask questions, and find a treatment center and a doctor that you feel comfortable and confident with. If you are considering having a procedure done, personally, I recommend Dr. Cho and the Bangkok Revival Clinic. My experience was just better than I could have even imagined. Namely, her honest insights and support were invaluable in guiding me throughout the entire process. There are a lot of places out there that will take your money, give you an injection, and send you on your way. That is not the case with Revival Clinic Bangkok. Dr. Cho not only made sure I understood everything about the entire process, from my first consultation to follow-up sessions in the months after having it done, but I was always offered realistic expectations. It was never these pie in the sky, lofty, you're going to be able to dunk a basketball in a month. Everything was very grounded and very honest, and for that, I could not be more thankful. Stem cell therapy can correct osteoarthritis, but it is by no means guaranteed to work, and it's also not for everyone. If you are a suitable candidate, then it is a great investment to make for your health. So there you have it. I hope you have a better understanding of just how stem cell therapy treatment can treat osteoarthritis, as well as what the process is like. That does it for me. I am Cheyenne Hollis. This is Interesting Asia, and as always, keep it interesting.